just beyond those woods seems to be lurking unknown creatures. The creatures that cause the curiosity that eats away in the back of your mind. But what happens when we act on those curiosities and go and have an experience of our own? These 10 subscribers send me their allegedly true, creepy encounters with unknown creatures. If you have a story that you'd like to share, send it to the email. You can find it in the description below. This was a story told to me by my father, who has lived in New Hampshire his entire life. He is 48 years old. He's a well-known fireman and knows a lot of people, and knows New Hampshire fairly well. This story he told me reminded me of one of the stories on one of your recent videos, about some big creature spotted by a group of campers in northern New Hampshire. So, my dad grew up in northern New Hampshire in small towns. One thing people know about those areas is that it is haunted. I guess it's a popular spot for people to go to for adventures and stuff as well, to see if they can get any paranormal activity. When my dad was in high school, so about 30 years ago, he was dating this girl that was into adventurous things, and was down for doing just about anything. My dad was never fearful of anything, but this story really seemed to get to him. So, anyways, him and his girlfriend at the time decided that a cool date idea would be to go to the Mika mines and explore and see if they could experience anything. On the way there, they took a wrong turn down a long dirt road. This dirt road led to an abandoned sawmill. The sawmill had been abandoned for quite some time, and was known for paranormal activity, and also known for cults to go there and sacrifice animals and worship the devil. Knowing this, my dad didn't want to stick around, not because of the paranormal aspect, but he didn't want to be the next cult sacrifice. As he went to do a 3-point turn and leave, the front doors to the sawmill swung open and slammed, and out walked an 8-foot-tall creature. He described it as alien-like, swaying its huge, red glowing eyes and big black body. He swung his truck around and sped off, still able to see the creature in his rearview mirror. Luckily, he was able to get out of there, but he had no clue what this creature was, and claimed he has never felt that scared before, not even running into burning buildings. He never told many people about it, as he didn't want to be considered crazy, and where he knew everyone in that small town he grew up in, he didn't want to ruin his reputation or his family's reputation. The few people he has told have never seen or heard anything like that creature. No one knows if it was a demon, an alien, or undiscovered creature, or what it was. I know New Hampshire has a lot of forested areas and abandoned older places, so who knows what could be out there. Back when I was in the Boy Scouts, we took a trip to the Pine Barrens. I was around 11 or 12 years old. I always remember these kinds of trips to be memorable, with all of the hiking and fishing we would do. My troop and I finished setting up the side around dusk when we started making food for all of us. When it started to get late, everyone gathered around the campfire talking. I decided to take a walk to the latrine. It was about a quarter-mile away from the site, illuminated by a light post. I went inside and did my business. I knew it wasn't too far from the site and the scouts to feel any sense of being alone, but I just felt like something was off. As I was about to finish my business, I heard something outside the door. It sounded like something walking on the gravel trail. I decided to be a bit brave and look outside. What I saw is burned into my mind for life. It was a creature, hunched over, sniffing at the ground. It looked like a deer on 2 legs, but this was different. It had a forked tail, it had large bat wings, and its head was like a horse, but with horns. More like antlers. It had hooves and claws, too. Its eyes were glowing red, unnatural for anything I've ever seen. I sat there looking at it for no more than 30 seconds before it stopped and stared directly at me. I immediately closed the door. Now, it was nighttime, but I knew what I saw, and it was standing underneath the lamppost. I was far too young to drink or do drugs, and the skies were clear. I kept thinking to myself that if I stay in there, it may leave. Then I heard it walking. The sound of its hooves coming closer to the latrine grew louder. I tried peeking out the small hole in the wood, but I noticed a shadow covering it. I sat frozen. I started scratching at the wooden door. My heart was beating out of my chest. I could literally hear it breathing. Then I heard a sound that I will never forget. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the air. It sounded like a bat but louder, or a woman screaming but more distorted. I felt tears running down my face. The sound of its hooves on the gravel started stomping away. I looked out the door one more time and saw it open its wings in a full sprint and leap into the air. It disappeared into the night. I waited about 5 minutes before I ran back to the site. Everyone was wondering what that sound was, and they started laughing, thinking it was me trying to scare them. I couldn't even think to sleep. I stayed in my tent holding my pocket knife in my hand. I heard the scouts outside telling stories by the fire. Then I heard them tell a story about a creature with wings, a horse head, hoofs, and red eyes. As I ran out of my tent and told them that's what I saw, that's what made them scream. They all looked at me like I was crazy. I started crying and telling them it was true. All their faces turned white, and they started freaking out. The scoutmaster told everyone to pack up when we were leaving. I found out that that creature was called the Jersey Devil. After seeing it with my own eyes, before knowing the legend, I can tell you it's real. I will never enter the Pine Barrens of New Jersey ever again. This story happened about 4 months ago, and I swear, I'm still completely freaked out. I don't expect you to believe my story, because I can't even believe what I saw for myself. Sometimes, I secretly still hope that what I saw was just a loose branch or some shadow, but I highly doubt it. I'm a 14-year-old male, and every year I go skiing with my family somewhere in the mountains. Usually, we stay for about a week with our camper on a campsite. The campsite is only a few minutes away from the gondola that we use to ride up to the top of the mountain. I know the area very well. We have been skiing there since 2013, so for about 5 years now, and I have never experienced anything like this. Every year, there is a big party and concert, and a mountain at the top of the gondolas. The party falls on the week where we always visit. This is very important for the story. The party is always in the evening, and on this day, you can go skiing until midnight. Usually the slopes close at 7 in the evening. My brother, sister, and I always love this night, because skiing in complete darkness is totally epic. So, like every year, we grabbed our skis and snowboards and headed up to the gondola station at around 9 o'clock, 2 hours before the concert started, so that we still had time to go night skiing. I had a snowboard accident only a few days before, so I couldn't snowboard for long periods of time without my knees hurting like crazy. So, my parents, siblings, and I headed up to the station with the gondola. It's already dark outside, but still light enough to see something. I remember rubbing my knee and hoping that I could enjoy the night without too much pain. Up by the station, many people were already gathered, around 200 to 300 people, and some bands were already playing on the big stage. My siblings and I started to head down the slope. I was on my snowboard and my brother and sister on their skis. My parents were listening to the bands while drinking some beer. They didn't plan to go skiing that night. We were skiing for about 1.5 hours, and more people gathered by the stage. My siblings and I took the lift up one last time to be there for the beginning of the concert. About half an hour after the beginning of the concert, I noticed that my knee was hurting a lot. I was tired and stuff, and I was also freezing. My parents offered to take me to the gondola and to go to the campsite to get a good night rest. I agreed. My parents and siblings stayed up on the mountain because the concert was still a few hours long and it had just started. So I grabbed my board and stepped onto the gondola that would take me back to the valley. The trip down to the valley with the gondola took about 20 minutes. There were not many people in the gondolas around me because most people were still up there enjoying the concert. I got out my phone and started playing some random stupid game. After about 15 minutes on the gondola, I heard a loud thud from the gondola behind me. I looked up from my phone and was completely confused because I was sure that nobody had gotten on the gondola behind me. I turned around and squinted into the darkness. I could see the gondolas behind me, but not very clearly. I had no idea where the thud had come from, or what it was, until I looked at the bottom of the gondola. There was a creature hanging on the bottom of it. I could only see the outlines of it, so I wasn't sure if it was an animal or a person or something else. I stood on the top of the bench in the small gondola and opened the small window on the side of the doors to get a better look. I turned on my phone flashlight. What I saw then almost made me drop my phone out of the gondola. At first glance, I thought it was a coyote, but at second glance, I noticed that it definitely was no coyote. The creature was about as big as a Dane, and was covered in black-gray fur with patches of fur missing. Its face was completely weird. The snout was way too long for a normal coyote, and the teeth were sticking out, both upper and lower jaws. The eyes were yellow-reddish. The creature was holding onto the gondola with its long, skinny arms. It had long, looking claws. I stumbled back and pressed myself against the glass window. I looked down hoping that I would be in the valley soon, but I had about 5 minutes left. I could already see the station. I kept my eyes glued to the creature behind me on the other gondola. I stared right back at me and grinned. Not a kind of dog grin that you know if it's panting or sometimes looks like they're smiling. But no, it was a full-on grin, wide-mouthed and showing its teeth. Then, it started to rock back and forth, still holding on to the gondola. The entire thing started to rock, and so did mine, and the one in front of mine and behind me. All because this thing was swinging. They were all attached to one long steel rope. I started to get scared. I tried to calm my breathing down to get rid of my anxiety attack. The creature flung itself forward to my gondola. It tried to grab the bottom of my gondola. I was completely shocked when it jumped because the gondolas are about 20 feet apart from each other. I heard a large clang as the creature held on to the bottom of my gondola. The valley was only a few minutes away, and I completely freaked out and started crying. I heard a loud, pitched scream from under my gondola, and I hovered in a ball on the bench. About a minute away from the valley, I heard the creature let go and drop to the ground, which was about 50 feet away, with a loud thump. I peered down and saw it sprinting away into the woods below. After I got off the gondola, I could barely walk or speak. After I made it to the camper, I locked all the doors and windows, curled up in a ball, and cried. I didn't go skiing the next day, and didn't tell anyone what I saw because I knew they wouldn't believe me. I live in eastern Pennsylvania. My friend and I were hunting coyote at night at about 2 a.m. We were going up an unfamiliar logging trail. We had reached a clearing and eventually ran across a log that lay across the road. We stood around for a moment talking when we started hearing a sound. He said it sounded like sticks breaking. I think it sounded like someone hitting a dull axe against a log. The sound was, by my estimate, 150 yards away. I, being the more experienced one, said it was just the wind, but it was extremely irregular, like one knock every 30 to 45 seconds. It wasn't coinciding with the gust of winds, and it had changed location a bit, but remained in the same area. We also heard the noise a few times off to the side in the trees, and it sounded like it was approaching us, as if two separate things were making the noises. We felt uneasy and began to leave. That is when the sounds all stopped. After that, we left in my car. He pointed out that the woods became deathly silent while the noise was being made, and I pointed out that it stopped once we left. I remember people saying Bigfoot would break sticks to communicate or warn people. I looked up the noise and it's called tree knocking. It perfectly fit the description of what happened to me. Being a skeptic, I would like to know if anything else may have been making that noise. And did anyone else have any similar experiences? And do you think that I ran across a cryptid? I live on the west coast of British Columbia, in Canada, about midway up the coast. I was driving my girlfriend back to her granddad's house, 2 towns over from mine, about a 2.5-hour drive on the highways. I had driven her home and spent the day visiting her family. This town she is from is right on the coast. It's a port city. Not super important, but the point is that I spent the day there and was now getting ready to drive back home. About 25 to 30 minutes into the drive, I'm on the highway that runs parallel to the mouth of the river on one side and the CN tracks on the other. So it goes rail on my left, and then the road I'm on, and then some sort of mini channel where the river ends. I'm driving. It's getting dark, but I'm not tired or drowsy at all. There are a few rest areas along the road on my right, on the riverbank. I need to piss, so I start slowing down at the first one, and something scurries across the road. And that's almost all that happened. It was 4-legged, at least from what I saw. Black, like black as night, like unnaturally dark. No texture or anything to it, almost like a void of light or color in the shape of this thing. It ran out of the bush, over the rails. I was going slow enough that wind and highway noise was gone, and I heard it. Out of the brush came this sound, like metal tapping. It seemed like it was running over the rail. Then the sound if you took a rod or rebar and stabbed it into the ground. Then metal again, as it ran in front of me, across the road. Its body shape was like how people describe a UFO, almost a flat disc shape, like an oval stretched out, with its legs protruding from the front and back. It had no features, no eyes, no face or mouth, that I could see anyway. It ran across the road, limbs stretching out as it ran. Then, it ran into the rest area, over the bank, and I'm guessing into the river. I kept driving. I didn't piss until I got home 2 hours later. I lived alone, and in this remote location that we don't have cable or anything, so the only option is satellite TV. It was a humid summer night in July, and the TV was acting up, so I needed to go out and readjust the satellite like usual. I took a flashlight out and a gun with me. When I went outside, it was unusually quiet, like so silent it was unnerving. I brushed the thought off and went to the dish, which was in the corner of my yard. I went to work, making sure all the wires were all right and pointing it into a different angle. Suddenly, I heard a small snap of a stick to my left and turned my flashlight to the direction, and I saw a creature standing there. I got a good look at it for what seemed like an eternity, but it was probably only about 10 seconds. I slowed and backed off and ran back to my house and locked all the doors and windows. The creature was unlike anything I had ever seen before. When I shined the light at it, the first thing I saw was the head. It has cropped ears that pointed upwards. Its snout was narrower than a bear's and longer than I could imagine on a canine. I could make out large teeth protruding from the jaw. Its eyes were a deep red shade that seemed to reflect off the light as I was pointing at it. The body was muscular and huge. It had long arms and appeared to be longer than its legs. Broad shoulders that tapered into a skinnier waist. It was slightly crouched over when I saw it, with one hand wrapped around a small tree. I could make out the legs, which were similar to a dog's. It had an obvious hocks, and even with the crouched position I could tell that its height was probably 6 feet or more. Standing up to full height, this creature could easily be 7.5 feet tall. The fur was black and thicker around the neck and chest, and the bottom half significantly less so, almost like it was balding. I don't know if it was aggressive or not. What I do know is that feeling of dread, unlike I've ever experienced before. Was it just observing me or stalking me? For a creature this large, it was deceivingly silent. It got within 15 yards of me without ever noticing. I'm Aboriginal, and we have our own name for what Americans call skinwalkers. I am from the Central Australian desert. Cryptids are skinwalkers in the Native American folklore, and they are eerily similar to Aboriginal folklore. My great Nan used to tell me stories. One was when she gone picking berries and looking for witchetty grubs, honey ants, and bush bananas with her sister back when she was younger. One had followed them to where they were camping. During the evening, as the sun was going down, they heard something crying. It sounded near. When hearing sounds, it has the opposite effect. If it was near, it would sound far away, but if it were far away, it was definitely right there. They, my great Nan and her sister, stayed where they were and acted as if they were asleep, alert but paying no attention to it. The dogs they took with them were barking but didn't move. It was on the outskirts of their camp, just out of the light of the fire, crying. It was there. By the faraway cries, it was near, and was trying to lure them away from the light. She had told her sister to not look at it or try to speak to it. It sounded like a child crying. She said it didn't move away until the sun had started coming up. Guess it got bored. As soon as the sun was up, they made it home as fast as they could. This story always stuck with me. In my culture, whistling at night can draw them. Talking about them by word of mouth also draws them. Thankfully, I've never seen one, but I do believe they're out there. I've always known the Cryptid as an evil spirit. It could very well differ between tribes, even tribes so close together. It could even be derived from the Gadachi man, but looking back on the stories told to me, the latter is also described as the Featherfoot man. This happened 2 years ago. I was in England with my Boy Scout troop for a weekend in February. Everything was normal, until the second day when it had started to snow really heavily, so me and my two friends, let's call them Matthew and Lewis, decided to go and play hide and seek in the snow. I got all my warm clothes on and snuck out, which wasn't that hard because there was a window in our room. When I got out, they decided that I should be on, so I gave them 3 minutes to hide. After that, I ran in vaguely the same direction that I heard them go in. After about 4 minutes of looking, I was about to give up when I heard a weird mumbling noise. I ran over and shouted at the top of my lungs, "Found you!" But, to my surprise,
instead of finding a boy wrapped in winter clothes, I found a small, white humanoid crouched over next to a carcass of what looked like a large dog. I quickly jumped up and ran away. I could hear it right behind me, jumping from border to border. Eventually, I could see the hut we were staying in. Then, I did something I wished I hadn't. I turned around. I saw this thing stand up and realized that what I had originally thought to have been small was about the same height as me. I could see its big yellow fangs dripping with warm blood, and its eyes were deep red, and behind the door opened it was my leader. I turned around, and he was mad and asked me where I'd been for so long, and it turned out that I'd been gone for about a half an hour. I went through with them exactly what had happened, and as expected, no one believed me. The rest of the trip was normal, but 3 months later, I was shocked to find out that the exact same place I had been closed by police after a 12-year-old child had went missing for 2 days and had been found on a river, totally mutilated. Apparently, his throat had been ripped open, and his intestines had almost been eaten along with half of his leg. All I can say is I am never going back to that place again. This happened when I was around the age of 7. I wasn't alone when I saw it. I'll just call them Kat, Riley, and my sister Lily. It was years ago, so my memory may be a little hazy, but I still remember a lot from that day. Riley was our next door neighbor, and Kat lived up the street. Remember, we live in Montana in a countryside and have seen many spiders like the barn spider and hairy brown spider. The 4 of us were playing that very day, but then we went into the house that me and my sister lived in at the time. I don't remember exactly why, but we went outside for a little bit. My mom was speaking to someone, and we were heading for the door. We opened the door, then one of us closed the door. Only a few seconds after, we then realized the spider was not in our view, but then we all stood there in fear. It wasn't a normal spider. Its body must have been almost the size of a baby, while its legs were much longer. It quickly went away out of sight. Then my mom, only half a minute later, or some seconds later, said she saw the big spider crawl from the back door. I think, even up to this day, that it was literally on the door. But I'm just glad none of us got bitten by that son of a bitch. It was massive. I'm not sure exactly what to think of it. Just to clarify, this didn't happen to me. It happened to my girlfriend a year or 2 ago. Nevertheless, I always get freaked out whenever I'm in her woods. There's been 2 incidents, so I'll try to make them quick. One night, she had a few of her friends over, laughing, drinking, and having a good time in general. They did all their little parties in her dad's garage, which was a few yards away from the house. Beyond the garage was an unkept path that led into the woods behind her house. Across from the garage was an old trampoline that was too ripped up to be able to jump on. They decided to head back in when it got dark. My girlfriend has a big black dog. I'm not sure of the breed, but they definitely knew she was inside at the time. Right before entering the house, my girlfriend looked at the trampoline and saw a pair of bright yellow, shining eyes. Almost cat-like. She called her friends over, and they saw it too. Her dog, Jasmine, was right behind them in the house. When Jasmine let out a bark, the thing took off at an inhuman speed. The morning after, they found long claw marks on the side of the garage. The second time was when my girlfriend was taking a walk on a small trail through the woods. She has schizophrenia, so she does hallucinate a lot, but she swears that she knew that what she saw was real. About halfway down the trail, through dense shrubbery, she saw a grayish thing. It was walking on all fours. Its limbs looked twisted, and like it wasn't assembled right, but it definitely looked human to her. She waited for whatever it was to pass before running back home. We never go out to her woods alone anymore, especially at night or without a weapon. She believes her woods belong to wendigos or maybe skinwalkers. She couldn't tell very well. One thing is for certain, something strange is living in her forest. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment down below letting me know what you'd like to see next on the channel. Share this video on your social media and help the swamp keep growing. If you have a story you'd like to share on the channel, be sure to send it to the email that you can find in the description below.